Another very busy day in Phoenix Suns land. Devin Booker back. Mat Ishbia in. Isiah Thomas? Kevin Durant? What is going on? We'll break it all down on today's episode of Locked On Suns. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get podcasts. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, whenever you're joining us. Another busy day here in the world of the Suns, so I appreciate you making Locked On Suns your first listen to catch up with all of it. Wherever you're finding us, we're on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. Hit follow or subscribe. Get this show in your feed every Monday through Friday. If you're on YouTube, hit the bell down below. Get a notification when a new show goes up. And go ahead and drop a comment with anything on your mind related to this Suns team. We're going to break down the win over Brooklyn. I'm going to talk about Mat Ishbia getting approved and the craziness that's already going on with him. And then we're going to talk about Kevin Durant. So it won't be a traditional game breakdown. That's okay. You're here for the drama. You're here for the chaos. And so am I. Today's episode, guys, brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. More from them later on. All right, so 116 to 112. This one got a little hairy late, but the Suns were ahead for most of the game, most of the second half, and they come away with the victory. Cam Thomas had 43 points. Deandre Ayton had 35 and 15. And of course, Booker returned. 19 points for him in his return. 6 assists, just 2 turnovers. 26 minutes, which explains some of the relatively small counting stats there for Book. But I think there's a few things we need to hit on this one. I think from the Book return standpoint, you have to be impressed. You have to be surprised even at how well Booker, Paul, and Bridges were able to settle into a rhythm in this game. Booker was 6 of 15 from the field. Nobody shot great outside of Ayton. All right, he kind of lifted up the overall team field goal percentage. Bridges was 8 of 18, Paul 3 of 10, Booker 6 of 15. Wasn't their best performances, but I just went back and watched the highlights from start to finish, the full game highlights. I watched the game, and at no point in any of that did I feel like it was uncomfortable. Now, there might be some possessions, there might be some shots you feel like one of those guys should have taken over another, but in general, it felt right to me. Booker was getting the ball at the elbow and the post. He had some ISOs. Bridges was getting to the basket. He had a couple of nice finishes. He had a few nice mid-range jumpers. He was pulling the trigger on his threes. Booker got to the free throw line. Mikal did a little bit as well. And then with Chris Paul, it was, there was a couple of elbow jumpers. There were a few change of pace pull-up threes, which he's gotten really good at. And then you look and he has the 12 assists and just 2 turnovers. It's kind of the role that I envisioned him playing at the beginning of the season when this lineup was going to be fully healthy. You also throw in the fact that Cam Johnson had a pretty nice game, and you're not going to end up with too many people getting a lot of points. It's just not going to happen. This Suns team tonight, those 5 starters were the only players on the roster in the game to shoot the ball 10 or more times. The next most field goal attempts outside of the starting lineup was Saben Lee, who went 0 of 5 in 10 minutes, and then you had Jock Landale, 3 of 4 in 13 minutes. So it's going to come from those 5, and I think the balance, all things considered, felt right. I think the next place you have to go is Deandre Ayton, who I have already said the stat line of, but he deserves much more than just a reading of his stat line. Again, 35 and 15, 14 of 18 from the field, and 7 of 8 from the free throw line. What I kind of liked about what I liked about his game, not kind of, is how much it was a complete contrast. If you look at these 3 games that he's had in a row now on the road, something about January, February road trips with this team brings the best out of them. I will never really understand it. If you remember Monty's first season, that is really when this team broke out. New York, Dallas, Boston, they had a bunch of nice road games right around this time of year before the pandemic shut down. And Ayton at least, is hitting the ground running here, and obviously the Suns have won all 3 games. He has had a nice array of different types of games that's really cool to kind of put together. Boston was a great two-way performance. I think you have to feel good about the way he played on both ends in that game. I think it was one of his better defensive performances of the season, but I also think it was pretty solid offensively. 14, 10, and 5. You felt like he was finishing. He was getting the ball in positions to succeed, and it was working for him. Then against the Pistons, I think very offensive, 31 points, 16 rebounds. And then again tonight, a very similar, almost identical stat line. And it's just that contrast, right? He can do it that way against Boston, where he is contesting shots, dealing with Boston's drive and kick defense, being mobile, going vertical, all those things that make Ayton such a special non-shot blocking rim protector when he's at his best really showed in Boston. And then you flip it and you see in Detroit, and then again tonight, he just gets up for small teams these days, and it's, I guess Jalen Duren is not exactly small. He's 6'11", 250 is what he's listed at, but he's a rookie. He's not going to, he was 0 of 2 from the field with 4 fouls in that game. He played 28 minutes, but he wasn't much of an impact. And then tonight against the Nets, they have Nick Claxton, who, he's probably like 6'10". He's not physically going to necessarily match Ayton, but he had a pretty strong game. And then at any point when Claxton was either switched off of Ayton or they had Day'Ron Sharpe in there or anyone else, it got ugly in a hurry, and Ayton was just able to punish them. I mean, in his last 2 games combined, he is 27 of 33 from the field for 62 points, and he has 6 plus 3, 9 offensive rebounds. I mean, he's just been absolutely filthy. Level of competition, whatever you want to do, but that's exactly, or whatever you want to say about who he's played, but that's why I go back to the Boston game, right? Because that was a different way of impacting the game, and I think we all came away from that Boston game maybe feeling like it was even better considering that it's Boston and that it was a two-way performance, even than I do watching him put up 31 and 15. And so it hasn't just been one thing, which is what I've really liked. On that note, one of the other great things he did tonight, although it was a little bit of a shootout in Brooklyn tonight, was corralled Cam Thomas. And I want to talk about Cam Thomas here because he's one of the weirdest little micro stories of the NBA. Who knows? Maybe it won't be micro when it's all said and done. Maybe this guy's just going to average 40 the rest of the season. But he had 43 tonight, so that is back-to-back nights. I think he's now scored 90 points in these 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, because this was the second night of a back-to-back for them. He played 39 minutes. You could hardly tell that it was a back-to-back. He got to the line 20 times, although like 6 or 8 of those were the late-game foul matching stuff. But still, you can't take away 43 from him. 39 minutes, though, and he was a -4 from the field, -4 in the box score. The Nets were outscored by 4 points when he was in the game. So that means the other 9 minutes, they played the Suns to a draw. His 39 minutes, they were outscored by 4. That's the deficit that they end up losing the game by. Cam gave up, I don't want to say 43, but he gave up at least half of what he put in the point total tonight. We're not going to do the whole recap show like we normally would tonight, but if we were, he would be in the last segment. He would be the pigeon of the game, the Karl Anthony Towns, the Michael Porter Jr. honorary pigeon of the game, because the Suns from the jump, this is what happens when you're on a scouting report. This is what happens when Kyrie gets traded. His reinforcements aren't active yet from the Mavs, and then Kevin Durant is still out. All right, young man, like you're not only on the scouting report from a how do we stop you standpoint, where you're on the scouting report from a what can we do to punish you on the other end standpoint, and they did that. They were getting 8 non-seals against him because the Nets switch everything, right? So Thomas ended up trying to defend Ayton in the post a few times. They would run sets where they were involving Cam Johnson as a part of the initial pick and roll. So they would have Cam kind of just do like a quick slip screen right into a DeAndre Ayton real pick and roll, hard screen. And so Cam is having to figure out, am I following Cam Johnson out there? Am I switching on to Chris Paul? Am I following DeAndre Ayton to try to contain that? What do I do? Caught in no man's land. And they got numerous lob dunks right over the top of Cam Thomas's head. Book was isolating against him and everything else, right? It's not even like he's not a very good defender. But I don't even know if it was so much that he's a bad defender is why they went after him, because there's plenty of guys on this Nets team that are exploitable. I think it was more just like they probably thought if they did that he wouldn't be able to score. But he did both. He got abused on defense, and he still put up 43. So they only lost by 4, and they had none of their players. I guess that's kind of a W for them. That'll wrap this portion of the show up. Win 116-112. Let's move on to the chaos. Mat Ishbia, formally voted in by the Suns or by the NBA to be the new managing partner, team governor of the Phoenix Suns. And we got some drama on night 1 related to a former Knicks executive, a former Detroit Piston, a Hall of Famer. You know who I'm talking about. We'll dive in next. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by LinkedIn. All right, so it's 2023. As a small business owner, hiring manager, success this year depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your post, your company, and their nearly 1 billion member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify those candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and then connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your qualifications for your job, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We had a 116-112 victory by the Suns over the Nets. We also had the first game of the Mat Ishbia era, the first day of the Mat Ishbia era. A few things off the top. One, he's putting himself out there. All right, that's takeaway number 1. There will be a press conference on Wednesday at about 11:30 local time. You might have already seen some of the takeaways and quotes from that by the time you listen to this. I don't know, but there were interviews prepped and ready to go. The Athletic, the Associated Press, AZ Central. I might even be missing one. So what that tells me is Suns PR, Ishbia's people, they were wanting to pump out positive, get to know me type of stuff as soon as the purchase went through, and it did. All right. So I liked Doug Haller's piece at The Athletic. I think Doug's a really, really good reporter. He had an awesome piece on Chris Paul a few months back about who all of his assists had gone to and all this, and great stuff. But he did a really good job on this piece. He interviewed Charlie Bell, who you would remember as an NBA player once upon a time, and a former Michigan State guy working at United. What is it called? What is the company called? UWM, United Wholesale Mortgage. All right. He talked about the amount that Mat Ishbia knows about and keeps track of in the company, and just gave the impression of what type of owner he's going to be. But he also just got some very quick hit answers from Ishbia as well. All right, so a few things off the top. Doesn't seem like the luxury tax is going to be that big of a problem. He said it's not one of the first things on his mind. We're focusing on winning and not money. Money follows success. That's a really good quote. That's what you say when you're paying $4 billion for a team, or you're paying multiple billions of dollars for your stake in a $4 billion team, and you want to show that you mean business, right? The trade deadline, he said, I understand what fans are looking for, and trust me, I'm looking for the same thing. We have the ability to win now, and we're going to do everything we can to put the best team on the court. TBD what that means. I'm not going to overreact, because who knows? He's not reading Twitter and knowing exactly what you all want to hear him say, so I'm not going to freak out about him saying they have a great team now, because we've been hearing non-stop from Shams and Woj and Jake Fisher and Chris Haynes and everybody that the Suns are very, very, very committed to making a move this week. I don't know if they will, but I'm not going to panic right now. That brings us to the other quote, which was about changing the culture. He says, we're going to try to do it as quick as possible, but it takes time. First thing I'm going to do is take 90 days listening and learning from people. Not going to make mass changes. Going to come in and listen and learn, find out who people are, set the culture and the tone, and it starts with me at the top. All right. So understandable why he would be asked about that. I think any new owner of anything, any new CEO, whatever, these people would be asked about it, right? That's kind of, at the end of the day, you're not filling out Excel spreadsheets. You're not even necessarily holding meetings. You're the final decision maker. You're the tone setter. And so, of course, that's going to be the case. But in this particular instance, obviously, with what Ishbia is following, which was basically 15 years, 10 to 15 years, whenever you want to say the Sarver stuff got terrible, of complete mismanagement, a complete hostile environment day to day in that Phoenix Suns office, and obviously bigotry and mistreatment of employee. The list goes on. We all know what happened under Sarver. And so, of course, you're going to pay more attention to what Ishbia says about that side of things. And of course, with that said, it's going to look pretty ugly when the first real concrete report we hear about what this new era might look like for the Suns includes the name Isiah Thomas. All right, so Chris Haynes goes on the broadcast on TNT tonight during the game and says the Suns are expected, Mat Ishbia is expected to hire Isiah Thomas in a prominent front office role to work alongside James Jones basically right away when he takes over the team. Now, I will just cut to the chase and say, as you probably already know, Ishbia's people reached out directly to Kellen Olson and to Dwayne Rankin, who tweeted out their responses or thoughts or just the fact that Chris Haynes had said that. And Ishbia's people told them, that's not real. He's not taking over. He's not even going to be part of the transition process or anything like that. These guys are just buddies, basically. Now, Isiah Thomas was at the January 21st matchup when Ishbia attended the Suns game. All right. The Arizona Republic photographer, whose name is escaping me right now, he's awesome, posts a bunch of cool photos on Twitter all the time and is a big Suns supporter. He tweeted a picture of those two guys here. So, and we also know there was a quote from Isiah Thomas in some sort of business article about this whole thing a few weeks ago that indicated some level of involvement. Ishbia has said it's not real. Isiah Thomas was a guy, and not to belabor it now because it appears it's not going to happen, but in the event that it ever does, or if you are wondering what the big deal is, I will just briefly describe it as Isiah Thomas settled for almost $12 million, $11.5 million with a woman who worked for the Knicks when he was the president there. And he settled with her for $11.5 million over allegations that he sexually harassed her, and that when she spoke up about that, he fired her in a retaliatory way. If that's a word, I don't know. That would obviously have been a extremely troubling thing to do as your first order of business, taking over a franchise which only became available for you to buy because the last guy did the same crap, okay? I know it sounds like I'm joking, but it's because that is how unbelievable a decision like that would have been. Now, what I want to say, because we have plenty of time, I understand it probably sounds like I'm dwelling on negatives here, and we can all talk about freaking cancel culture, whatever, never. I don't want to have that conversation with anybody outside of my house. I'm not being negative just to be negative. I'm being negative because this came out, because it seemed legitimate, and because of how bad it would have been. There's plenty of time to talk about what Ishbia will do with the luxury tax and the trade deadline, because that's going to happen every day from here on out. He owns the freaking team now. Everything that happens is going to have to do with him. Okay, so I'm not dwelling on this just to dwell on it. The last thing I will say is I do believe that this was real. I've seen people being like, wow, that's the trial balloon. You leak that out and you just see what happens, and then Twitter bullied him. It worked. Haha. I don't know about that. I also don't really buy that Chris Haynes just completely got it wrong. You know what I mean? I tend to think Chris Haynes, I'm going to trust most reporters whose volume is low, just in general, because I think Twitter and whatever incentivizes, throw stuff out there and see what sticks, and you can get it right 75% of the time and no one will remember the 25%. I don't think Chris Haynes operates like that. He doesn't put a lot of things out there. In general, period. He just doesn't. And knowing that this was going to be on TV, he saves stuff for the broadcast. We know that about him. He's read these Jay Crowder, hostage letters and everything else recently. And so I just have a hard time believing that he just really screwed it up that bad, considering, again, we know there's a real connection between these two people. And so I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think probably Ishbia had some level of interest in bringing him on. Maybe it wasn't ever going to be immediate. Maybe it wasn't ever going to be the exact role that Chris Haynes described. Like, I'm willing to believe that there was some incorrect stuff in there, but I think it would not surprise me at all. In fact, I completely believe that Isiah Thomas, who in addition to being accused of this stuff and settling for such a humongous amount of money, also was incredibly bad at his job. His job being make the Knicks good at basketball and winners on the basketball court. He was pretty terrible at that as well. All that said, I do think there was some legitimacy to it for all these reasons. And I also think that the reaction being what it was would not surprise me, even just down to the fact that the reporters that you saw get the statements sent to them by Mat Ishbia's people, it wasn't Chris Haynes. He didn't come back in the third or fourth quarter and read off a statement and say, I've been refuted by these people. You didn't see Woj tweeting something out, right? It went to the two reporters, Kellen and Dwayne, who had their tweets go the most viral about this. Okay? Like, that's what happened here. And so even that tells me the response did matter. So I don't think it was nothing. I don't think it was that Twitter bullied them into changing their mind. I think it was somewhere in the middle. And that in and of itself means it's worth talking about, because I do truly believe whatever level of cancellation you think Isiah Thomas might be facing and whatever amount that conversation factors into your thinking on this, he is a guy who has been NBA toxic for basically ever since he left the Knicks. He has been on NBA TV doing television. He's not very well liked in a lot of circles, as we can tell by The Last Dance and everything else. He has not been hired to be in anybody's front office since this time, and there's a reason for that. There's multiple reasons for that. And so whatever it took, I guess the relief is he's not going to be around the employees of this team, and he's not going to be put into a position of power again when I don't think he deserves one. Let's close with Kevin Durant, as if there was not already enough that has spilled out of my mouth that feels very high stakes. This week is insanity. Kevin Durant reportedly having conversations with the Nets. I'll tell you what those conversations were and what I make of all of it in a second. First, today's show, guys, brought to you as well by FanDuel, the new sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, and the only app you need at your Super Bowl party. That's the FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. If it's your first time betting, if you've never joined the FanDuel family before, come with us. They have a ton of great features that make sports betting fun and easy. You can download the FanDuel app now to bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet, and you'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything, from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/LockedOn to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so a quick few thoughts on Kevin Durant to get you up to date here. Adrian Wojnarowski, that's how he says his name. I don't know. I just try to say it the way other people say their own names. I don't know why it's Woj and then it's Wojnarowski is how he says it. That's what I'm going to go with. The Nets have insisted to Durant, this is a quote, and inquiring teams that the organization has no intention of moving him prior to Thursday afternoon's trade deadline, sources said. Durant, who asked out and later rescinded a trade demand in the offseason, held a strong interest in an offseason trade to the Phoenix Suns, but that organization, meaning the Suns, and numerous others have been told that the Nets aren't interested in moving Durant, sources said. Phoenix new majority owner Mat Ishbia is fully engaged overseeing the operation and has been aggressive in pursuing ways to make a major and immediate impact. Again, to the point I made in the last segment about Ishbia, him saying, we have a great team now. You see stuff like this, it doesn't make me think the team's going to look the same in a couple days. That is a separate concern. Also hilarious, the Suns played the Nets of all teams tonight. I just have to say that. Nevertheless, I talked about this on Tuesday's show, okay? Stephen A. Smith comes out and says right away, Boston is interested. They're making aggressive pushes to get Kevin Durant. Jaylen Brown might be on the table. Look out for the Celtics. Silliness. I don't think Kevin Durant's going to the Celtics. I don't think the Celtics would want to do a trade like that. They're potentially the favorites to win the championship right now when you just look at the uncertainty with so many other teams. Why am I going to trade my second best player who is having the best season of his career, is significantly younger, and already fits here? I don't see it, right? But what does that tell me then if I don't actually think it's a real possibility, but it's still coming out? Well, that tells me somebody in Brooklyn or something, probably Brooklyn, right, came to Stephen A. Smith and said, the Celtics want him. The Celtics are calling us. We want Jaylen Brown and we think we can get him. Whatever the way it's phrased, what does that do? It sets the price. The first rumor to come out is Jaylen Brown. Okay, probably the best single player that would ever realistically be available for Kevin Durant that's been talked about over the past year since he demanded the trade last summer, right? Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, on and on down the line. I would say Brown is the best one. That benefits the Nets quite a bit, right? The starting offer, so to speak, that's out there, the first one to get spoken on the airwaves from a trusted person who gets a lot of eyeballs on his show, Stephen A. Smith, is Jaylen Brown, right? The first offer is the best offer. Beat that, guys. And you can't, right? So that helps the Nets a lot. This feels similar, right? This feels similar. I saw somebody, I think is Piper Gibson, I think is his name, covers the Pistons and has a good Twitter account with a lot of X's and O's type stuff. He tweeted and I retweeted him that just said, I read this as make the offers better, right? That's what I hear when I read this is, they're having direct conversations with owner Joe Tsai and general manager Sean Marks on the direction of the franchise and its ability to be a championship contender. That tells me Durant being unhappy is still a possibility. Like, that doesn't tell me everything's kosher, right? That tells me the Nets have a couple days here to swing another trade to hold out as a carrot for Durant to want to continue to play at a high level for that franchise. And that tells me that there's still a possibility, even if it's very, very, very tiny, that Durant could potentially get traded between now and Thursday and very much could get traded this summer. When we talk about benefiting the Nets, when we talk about a leak, a rumor, a report being put out that speaks to wanting the offer to be raised, right? What does that mean? Well, it means the same exact thing that most of the things from this particular reporter, Mr. Wojnarowski. I'll say it how it's spelled. I, again, don't know. That's not even disrespect. I don't know how to say the man's name. That's all right. It tells us the same thing that most of his reporting from last year did. It tells you what Sean Marks wants you to know. The level of denial about the reality of the situation that came from Woj last summer, coupled with multiple indications of how unavailable and not to be moved in a trade Kevin Durant is right now, tells you who is feeding that information. If Kevin Durant had an interest in being traded, which there's no shortage of people he would go to in that instance, he could also just tweet it. The man is not shy. But if the information was coming from Kevin Durant, and even if it was positive, this is not how it would be listed, right? This would be Durant is uncertain. Durant wants to hear X, Y, and Z. Even the way it's written, right? Kevin Durant is having conversations. The Nets have insisted X. The Nets have made it clear to the Suns that Y. This is very clearly written from the Nets' point of view. And so I guess I'm not taking anything grand away from that except to say this shouldn't tell us how Durant feels. This tells us how the Nets feel. We don't know how Durant feels. And that's the missing ingredient, and it will be until we hear from him or he's moved. What is his status right now with the vibes in Brooklyn? How aggressively is he willing to push for a trade, and how aggressively is he willing to push for a particular destination, whether it's the Suns or anything else? Those are the questions we still don't know. This article for sure didn't answer them. This person who works at ESPN is not going to be the guy to tell us that. I can guarantee you of that. All right, that'll wrap us up for today. Back tomorrow, maybe in the evening, maybe ready for Thursday morning, maybe sooner. We'll see. If craziness ensues, I will hop on as soon as I possibly can. Until then, hit follow, hit subscribe. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen today. Do it again tomorrow, the next day, and beyond. In the meantime, go make Locked On NBA your second listen today. Get caught up on everything else going on around the league, the other teams' perspectives, the national perspective, all of it. That show also available on all podcast platforms. Subscribe there, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.